welcome to the first series of roundtable discussions on faith affairs of the United Nations Association of El Salvador. My name is Madelyn Rodriguez, and I'm the chair of the Evangelical Advisory Board for the organization. And for me, it's a true honor to have here Lili Valletta, who's an entrepreneur, Ishmael Dodoo, who is from the United Nations, and also Secretary General of the United Nations Association of El Salvador, Ambassador Carlos Garcia. I want to start off with Ambassador Carlos Garcia, who is a former permanent representative of El Salvador to the United Nations and currently Secretary General of the United Nations Association of El Salvador, who is also a career diplomat. Thank you for being with us. Lili Valletta is co-founder and CEO of CN, also part of the World Economic Forum Young Global Leader, also TV commentator for Fox News, CNN, and other channels, was one of the 10 Latinas entrepreneurs invited last year to the White House by President Donald Trump. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And Ishmael Dodoo joined the UN in 2008 through a leadership program, worked in many capacities, including policy and programs in areas in several countries in Africa, including post-conflict countries, until recently functioned as a policy and development affairs to the Executive Office of the Secretary General. Currently serves as the country oversight advisor to the Assistant Secretary General and Director of the UNDP Africa Bureau. Thank you so much for being with us here. I want to start off with Ambassador Carlos Garcia. Where did you have this vision and this mission to have a faith branch in your organization?
Well, thank you, Madelyn, for sharing this event, and also thank you also my distinguished colleague and friend for being here this afternoon. Since the United Nations Association of El Salvador was created, I thought that there is a very important issue that needs to be addressed, which is precisely how to connect and expand the gospel around the world, but also how that can happen in the context of what the United Nations calls the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a program that is foreseen to be implemented from now until the year 2030. That means that we have basically almost 15 years to work on these goals that need to be implemented across the world, and how private organizations such as the United Nations Association of El Salvador, government, UN officials, and private sector, and different other organizations can do part in promoting this vision. Now, having said that, the United Nations has always bring together different religions and organizations that are connected from a spiritual viewpoint. Most of the time, these organizations have focused their attention on peace, international peace, and all these issues related to it, which is perfectly great, and I do feel appropriate for these organizations and religions to deal on this important matter. However, being part of the diplomat group from El Salvador in 2013 and 14, I also foresee the importance of connecting with a different perspective or a different angle, if you like, to this issue. And I saw that the Christian community around the world has doing an important job actually on the ground through ministries that different churches has around the planet. This is a beautiful example on how connect these two wonderful words. On the one hand, you have the United Nations as a global organization promoting the importance of sustainable development goals and calling not only government but also civil society, academia, private sector, and different other relevant stakeholders to do so. And on the other hand, you have actually thousands, millions of churches around the world that through different ministries are addressing those issues on the ground, touching the heart and the perspective and mind of individuals across the globe. So we have two powerful words that are doing something that connects individuals on the ground. Now, here's the point. These two wonderful organizations and words do not talk to each other, or to say the least, they have limitations in terms of how do they relate each other. So through the United Nations Association of El Salvador, we would like to create a platform that connects these two words in regards to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the additional value added that I will say is that we're currently living on a prophetic times whereby we are seeing so much disaster, hunger, violence, crimes around the world, and several other aspects that are telling us that we are living almost on the end of time. Now, from a Christian perspective, this is a very good opportunity to connect to the UN and provide a vision that will include God's in terms of requesting his wisdom, and he's also praying for his support, and also to illuminate us as an individual that are in different positions across the world that can support and promote different programs that can contribute to solve all these issues that are addressed at this, by the Sustainable Development Goals, but with an ethic viewpoint and a Christian viewpoint that transform not only the life of we as an individual leader well positioned in this political position, but also that transmit this spirit into the individuals. So this is the proposal that I have for discussion today, how the United Nations Association of El Salvador is willing to serve a platform to connect these two worlds, serving as a bridge to unite these two worlds with a view to give a value added to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals.
That's great.
And with that, we understand that Ambassador Carlos Garcia, Lili Valletta, and also Ishmael Dodoo, that one of the things that we must be clear is that this world, we are humans. With our human capacity, we are not able to resolve the problems of this world because this world was created by a supernatural God. Therefore, we need people in places of authority, in leadership positions with the spirit of excellence and also with supernatural abilities. When we say spirit of excellence, we mean like a Daniel, like an Esther, like a Joseph. For example, a spirit of excellence is going to lead God's creation into righteousness, and also it's going to lead creation into the path of eternity with supernatural abilities. I know you can comment on that because the thing is that if we are trying to resolve this world with our human capacity and it was made by a supernatural God, we need to see God to have supernatural abilities. For example, in this table here, I see Joseph's, I see Esther and Daniel's. For example, Lili Valletta, I can see her as Joseph the Dreamer because you're an entrepreneur. He was a financial advisor. Then we see Daniel, Ambassador Carlos Garcia, who's a negotiator, a diplomat. And also we have Ishmael Dodoo, who's at the United Nations, and who God is using you in a very great way so that you can advocate for your people like Esther did. So if you can please just see how important this is.
Yeah. So I want to comment back into some of the things that the ambassador said, because, you know, we hear a lot of buzzwords in the world of the UN's work. And I am speaking as an outsider, I'm speaking as a business owner, I'm speaking as somebody that is a friend to the SDGs, but not until recently learned about them as much as I did. So, but you hear about this PPPs, and what the heck are the PPPs? Those are public-private partnerships. And what I'm seeing as an amazing vision that the ambassador has put forward is the ability to almost add another letter to the PPPs, and it's like PPFPs. This is public-private faith-based partnerships. And back to your point about being an extraordinary work, that of impacting humanity. You know, regardless of creed, regardless of religion, you know, the thing with religion is that people associated with one particular line of beliefs that maybe somebody else is trying to impose on me, and that's very intimidating.
Absolutely.
That could be really like uncomfortable. Even if I am a non-Christian, non-believer, it feels like, oh my gosh, if you bring the Christians in the room, it's gonna feel judgy, it's gonna feel different. And it's on us too as Christians to come forward with a mindset and not with a creed. And the mindset is one of the way you live and the way you exercise what you do every day, whether you are at home with your kids, an ambassador, you know, working with the Secretary General, or running a business. We all know that what moves us every day to excellence is much greater than ourselves. And I think what the world needs right now, where we think money moves the world or power or other things, is elevating the fact that is a purpose-driven leadership what really is gonna get things done. And maybe for those of us Christians around this table, that purpose-driven mindset comes from our God that we believe in, and that we feel that, you know, we are living through him and a walking testimony of what we ought to be to the world. But it's just bringing that spirit into the work. I think it's one of the greatest ways that we can activate the PPF piece, and bringing the army of like-minded people that want to go out and make a difference because they're already doing it in ministry. They just don't know they're aligning to 17 goals that a lot of influential people have put together in the United Nations. So let's just show them they're already impacting humanity's big global goals, and give them platforms and enable that army of purpose-driven people to just play for the same thing that we're all playing for, which is making humanity, sustain and live for what it needs to stand for, and the world a better place. For those of us that believe in it, getting the world ready means being ready for that great moment of the second coming and what is to come. That's great. That's hopeful. Maybe to others that means nothing, but it's still the same spirit of hope. So it's how do we activate that as a mindset that transcends creed? And we as Christians have an upper hand in living, and I guess feeling like we're doing stuff for something bigger than ourselves, that if we can just sprinkle a little bit of that into the work, I think we're going to get there quicker, faster, in better ways to impact more people and more places. So those are my 2 cents. So maybe we're adding a new letter to the partnership. So, but it's on us to make it feel constructive and not intimidating, because it could be. It could be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that whenever the UN is talking, we tend to sort of create a world around ourselves sometimes, and people, don't really get the UN. And so when you are on an outside, if you're private sector, you are not able to figure out what this animal is and how do I engage this animal. Everybody talks about the UN engaging the private sector, civil society, engaging faith groups and so on for the common good of the world. But the word engagement is something that needs to be unpacked. How do we engage? When we say we're engaging, what does it mean? And UN needs to do a better job to try to unravel that, so that we can create opportunities for engagement. But I would like to come back to your point about, and in fact, Lili also raised the point, and I like the PPFP. I love that too. It's a way to go. Yes. It's a way to go. Really, really, it's a way to go. To say that the first principle is that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness of it. The Lord created this earth, and He did not create anything for entertainment. Even color was not created for entertainment. Think about it, that there are certain birds that are attracted to particular type of color. And then there are certain insects that are attracted to certain particular type of color. So God did not create anything for entertainment. Everything He created has a great purpose. And He set this purpose out. And so God created man for a purpose, and every man has a particular purpose to fulfill. Problems are a conglomeration of the idiocy and some of the stupidity of men. And we created these, and then we use our own human minds that created this problem to try to solve it. But in order for us to address the enormity of the problems that we do have, it's important for us to go back to the altar to say, what was the original intended purpose for this? So that we can learn, we can go back to basics and follow the principles to be able to address it. And I think that this is where Christians can make a difference. We work in organizations, but we ourselves are Christians in organizations, and we have a calling upon our lives, and we must let the callings upon our lives to inspire us in everything that we do. So when you sit in a meeting and you're having a conversation, everything you say must be inspired by the power of the Holy Spirit. Because in that inspiration lies wisdom, lies deeper understanding that goes beyond just the situational context in which you're dealing with. Behind every context is a spirit. You to take the man who is walking or the woman who is walking in spirit to really understand that spirit, to be able to unravel what the problem is. And I think this is where we make a lot of difference as Christians. We bear the fruits of the Holy Spirit in us. When the world is looking for excellence, they go back to the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Is this person trustworthy? Does he have integrity? Is he truthful? Is this person somebody that you can rely upon? Is this person you can, they look at all the excellence in the fruit of the Holy Spirit, and they go after that in men who demonstrate this, even in a small way, and say, this is the man that you can work with. But we have it as Christians. So our influencing factor in every area of our lives is so huge, if only we will understand that.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was just going to say, and again, maybe it's me in the outsider's view, I feel like the work of this particular, faith affairs branch and the serving as the link as the PPFPs is almost reminding Christians that ministry lives outside those four walls that you call a church.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And also to remind all of us of the fact that in this era of digital connectivity, of globalization, of boundaryless worlds, that there's no excuse to have global impact. Because we have it. Anyone with a phone can start having global impact today.
That's right.
So it's almost like we need to be reminded. I love what Ishmael just said, that we are working in places where, unfortunately, maybe it's, we also get comfortable as Christians and walk through those doors Monday morning and leave the Christian behind for the weekends. So it's like, how do we activate through the work and the framework that is very smart of the 17 SDGs, the power and the mindset and the spirit of the Christian community for them to realize, oh my gosh, what I'm doing already in my own community with the children's ministry ties into an education, an equality, and a supporting girls type of SDG, which you just don't know.
Exactly.
So it's very powerful. I think it's on both sides. So it's not just to say, oh, UN, you're not involving us, but it's also us not saying, hey, I'm here to help the greater good. So it's enabling that conversation that I think is so powerful.
Just jumping in quickly to say that everything that Jesus has taught us on earth, he's always taught us to solve problems. Everywhere Jesus, he started as a carpenter.
That's very true.
Yes.
He started as a carpenter, builds, just imagine
That's right.
building windows and all these sort of things.
Yeah.
All right. So he comes to your house. Can you imagine Jesus walking to someone's bedroom and really doing stuff on the table, or arranging chairs and fixing it and having a conversation with that person and telling the person what is in his heart, and also. As a carpenter, you hear a lot of things. You go to someone's bedroom and you can really understand the problems that the person is facing. So Jesus, even as a carpenter, it's not by coincidence that he was a carpenter, that he can actually understand the psyche of the human being, so he can determine the solutions for the problems that we go through. When Jesus was preaching to the 12,000, he looked at them and these guys are hungry. So he said, where can we get some food to eat to serve these people? He constantly looks to solve problems. Now, the world always go after fame and feels that when you have the fame and the money, then you become influential. No, the ones who solve problems are the ones that are influential.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we have to learn to solve problems.
Absolutely, because when we see Joseph in the Bible, he was a financial advisor. He was able to interpret the dream of Pharaoh, who was the most powerful man on earth at that time. And Pharaoh had a dream, and he said, I saw 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows. For a natural man, someone who's not in the spirit, they're not going to understand that dream and say, this dream doesn't mean anything. But when you're in the spirit, you'll understand that this dream is symbolic, that God speaks through symbols. So Joseph was able to interpret this dream and tell the Pharaoh, listen, this is what God is trying to tell you. 7 fat cows is 7 years of abundance, but then there will be 7 years of famine. So you know something? Let's find a way to strategize to store this food so that people can have food when the 7 years of famine take place. And he was able to save millions of people.
Right,
Yeah.
and
that's-
this is sorry, and that is precisely where the UN Sustainable Development Goals fit in this equation, because precisely we have, let's say, saying that the ultimate goal of the Sustainable Development Goal is trying to bring a prosperous world for everyone, for the whole planet, for the individuals, and for communities as well. Now, based on this idea, we try to fragment each other, our own minds, and says, as Lili say, we are, let's say, good officials of the UN, or an entrepreneur, or we are a good ambassador or diplomat, or whatever career you are, or even a simple individual from Monday to Friday, but then you become Christians
On the weekend.
That is what is, let's say, traditionally happening, because we are fragmented ourselves. Now, the point here is to be a comprehensive person, an integral person all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, 7 days a week, 365 days, around the year. And with that vision, what we are just trying to connect is the wisdom of the Lord in terms of addressing issues, with also taking into account His own commands, in particular the first and the second. You have to love God, but also you have to love your neighbors. How you pretend to solve problems of other people if you do not love the neighbors? That is impossible. It's simply a technical, let's say, solution that at the end, when you need to fix, let's say, either political, sociological, or different other, even cultural aspect within this project, you need to, or this conflict, you need to go beyond simply technical aspect of the programs. You need to go to the soul of the individuals, that is precisely when the Holy Spirit should come into your life and say, no, we need to address it from a different angle, from a different perspective, because it exists. That solution exists, and now we need to put it into action. And that is, I would say, is the value added of this idea. Of course, I am fully aware of what Lili just said in terms of many people may think, oh, okay, Christians are coming to town. It's not like that. It's like, okay, we are individual. We need to become integral human beings that are fully open and aware that we need to create and protect the planet that God gives to us. That is the main objective that we have, and that's the objective that the United Nations, by the way, has through the Sustainable Development Goals. So let's put together this work. Of course, there are aspects that everyone has within its own perception or their own beliefs, which is perfectly understandable and need to be preserved. But also there are many common areas, common angles that need to be put in together.
Yeah, I think that's what's gonna be so powerful, right? I can't wait to see what this work unfolds, and I'm so excited to even be part of it in any big or small way. So this is so exciting already, but it's pulling that common thread, right?
Right.
Because actually beyond Christianity, that common thread of there is a creator. And because there is a creator, where we live is not ours, but it was given to us to be stewards of.
Right.
So there's things like that that you can pull out that, in technical scientific circles, they call it, climate change and sustainability. Well, it means being good stewards of creation. So it's how do we translate for each other
That's right.
to realize that we're not in competition, but in collaboration, and that the same, and if all of a sudden you activate that faith community and the fact that, yes, maybe we believe in other set of things, but we can all agree that there's a common thread of caring for this planet that has been given to us as a gift and a responsibility to care for, then you look at this whole climate buzz through a different lens.
Yes, absolutely.
And not politicizing it or letting whatever the media is saying about it guide it, but knowing that we are one piece of the puzzle in something greater that happens to align to goal number 13, which is climate. So it's serving as translators. I think that's probably the best way I can see it, that we can activate it. And it's funny because you mentioned, Joseph and Daniel and Esther. That's what they did. They were bridges. They were translators that were put in a place of privilege, like no pressure for you guys in big diplomatic circles, but you are. So it's then what you do when you're in it, right?
Absolutely.
You either let God step in and show up, or leave him in the weekends at church. So that's it. And I'm just hopeful and excited. I guess I'm an optimistic by nature. So glass half full, and Madelyn knows this, but I feel like in the last couple of months, God has been just showing up in really fun ways. Like in the middle of the Super Bowl celebration, he's just like right in the middle of it. So things like that give me hope that we are at a time when it's right, and the technology is there, and the methods are there to tell the story, and people that are very influential that come forward and do it on live television. So if they can do it, I mean, the Super Bowl winners are Kathy Lee Gifford with Kelly in her show. Why not us?
Yes.
In a closed-door boardroom.
That's true.
Anyway,
But
As you said,
I have hope.
As you said, he's the best negotiator. That once you go into a business meeting, you were telling me before the round table, you seek God so he can give you the wisdom.
Yep.
You have King Solomon,
Absolutely.
who was the wisest man to have ever exist and the wealthiest man to have ever exist. And when God appeared to him in a dream, he said to the Lord asked him, what would you like me to give you? And he said, I need wisdom. So what we need to ask God is wisdom, and then everything else will be added. Seek the kingdom of God and his justice, and everything else will be added onto our lives.
Yeah.
And I guess it speaks to a couple of points which I have in mind. First, when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, it provides a very simplistic view of what we think provide solutions for how we can mobilize around very simple, essential goals. Right. To say, okay, we want to reduce poverty, this is how. We want to influence climate change, this is how. You want to influence governance, this is how. So that you can systematically look at different goals. You can work around them in tandem, or you can look at them individually and see what you can do to support. But I guess the issue here, though, in terms of connecting the church, I've had a privilege to meet a lot of men of influence, heads of state, CEOs, and so every one of them that I spoke to, particularly coming from my region in Africa, all of them have been to church. They were raised in the church. They went to Sunday school. Their parents are, Christians, and so if all of them were raising as like Christian one way or the other, were they raised to be religious, or they were raised to have the Spirit of God in them?
Exactly.
If they were raised to have the Spirit of God in them, then why are we having all these problems? Why is it so difficult to get them to change their minds around very simple things? It just shows that the church has a very powerful role to play in terms of influencing our larger society. Essentially, the church creates societies. The church has the potential to create problems that a society has. And the church has the potential to solve the problems that the society have. If you put, for heaven's sake, if we decide to put aside every once in every month, we say, well, this is the tithe that the church is going to give.
Right.
All the offerings in the world are going to be stored into a bank.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
And use that bank to be the source to stimulate entrepreneurship, solve the problems in education, in health, and let the money go around. Can you imagine how many billions we're going to? Yes. So the church has the resources to be able to address this. This is why Jesus said it would be better. The people that Jesus cursed were those who were religious. He never cursed anyone. Even the worst sinner Jesus did not curse. He said, "Woe to you." But those who were playing religion, he cursed them.
Yes, he did.
That's true.
Because the Lord doesn't like religion. He wants us to be, he told Adam, become. Then you be fruitful, dominate, influence. So everything the Lord has spoken to our lives is something that is very productive. So the moment you begin to create principles and precepts around traditions, you become religious. That's not what the Lord wants us to do. The Lord wants us to be very practical. In fact, the Lord is extremely practical. These guys are hungry, give them food to eat. Every worker deserves his wage. So go and preach, you deserve your wage. The Lord is very practical. He looks at our lives and says, guys, Children in the world are smarter than children in the kingdom because they just apply kingdom principles and they prosper. Principles, precepts. Success is predictable. Failure is predictable. If you follow the principles of the Lord, good success.
Right.
So we do have great influence to be able to turn things around.
Absolutely. And also we have to remember what even Jesus said in terms of, faith without works
Is dead.
is dead.
It's dead.
And that is precisely what the United Nations is trying to do through the Sustainable Development Goals.
Exactly. Work.
They're doing works.
Do work.
And the Christian community also has a value added, the faith, plus works too. So, of course, we are able to identify the commonalities between these two great words. Now, is up to us as an individual, as a Christian, and also as, if you like, a non-religion individual, but they has a common understanding that for the good of humanity, for the good of our planet, we can do many things well. And as Lili said, we have the PPFP, public-private faith-based partnerships.
Man.
Partnerships at
powerful.
the end, which is the Sustainable Goal 17,
Exactly.
is our key. And then
That
we
is
need to move on and forward
Exactly.
this idea with other partners.
That's very
around the
powerful.
world.
I think Ishmael just had, this is the way my business brain works this way, but you just had a big idea with what we're just saying about tithing. Tithing is incredibly powerful. I know many Christians themselves kind of struggle with it, because especially when you have limitations in your own means and ways to provide, which is actually when tithing is most powerful. But imagine if there was tithing of the tithing.
Yeah.
Like, to your point, this is where my head went. It's like, okay, every church has the blessing of offerings and tithes of their congregations. And of course, those monies go to work for the church, for supporting ministries, But imagine if there was a principle of tithing the tithe.
Yes.
So I'm not even asking for the 10%. It's 10% of the 10%.
Yeah.
That is still a ton for creating an impact fund. Impact investing is very in these days. There is nothing preventing us but our own selves in the Christian community with the own walls that we create for ourselves to agree that if this is important, meaning the impact of the SDGs, so we can agree to a common thread, and that everyone that wants to participate then agrees to tithe of the tithe.
Yes.
And you all of a sudden have an impact fund
Yes.
that gets allocated where it matters, where it's most needed, and back to Jesus' basic principles. Okay, what do we need? Fish and bread? Done. Wine for the party. This is one of my favorite things.
Right.
Back to the problem solving.
Yes. No, that's
First
absolutely true.
miracle. I just can't wait to talk to Jesus. He has like this cool moment that I love. It's like, so it's deciding where those funds go that are part of all of us, like just putting the barriers aside.
No,
So there's another
absolutely.
idea. Impact fund, of the
Impact-
tithing of the
Impact
tithing.
fund
Yes.
is absolutely
The
a
tithing of
great
the
idea.
tithing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, I would like to add something in terms of the, I would say, United Nations mindset, which is precisely that, because we are talking about the local community, the local church doing that precise approach. UN also has come up with the idea of having United Nations country teams. And those United Nations country teams act locally in every country,
Yes.
in developing countries. So let's say we can partner through SDG 17, as we just spoke recently, and connecting the UN country teams to identify programs where this money can be put into, let's say, specific programs that can be implemented jointly. But also, let's say, it's just in this particular comment that I made, just kind of bilateral approach, meaning by that the church and the UN country team. But what about is following the Sustainable Development Goal 17, we include local authorities, local chamber of commerce, for example, or local business or local schools. there are towns and schools around the planet that are really suffering for bad infrastructure or
Yes.
that is destroyed across the world.
Yeah.
And with an investment of, I would say, $10,000, $20,000, which is not a large
Not a
amount
lot.
for the money that we are foreseeing in this initiative, can be allocated for addressing these problems with the value added that, remember, if we are able to change the life of every individual child in a local community, they also become multiplicators or people who will transform their experience into a powerful voice for transform others. Why? Because they can serve as an example that it is possible to identify this kind of project, this kind of partnership, and acting locally. That, of course, then goes regionally, nationally, internationally, and we follow the logic structure, but it's feasible, and that is the beauty of this approach.
Yep. This is incredible, and it speaks to two things: the seed, the power, or the power of the seed. That we begin as church, as Christians, begin to sow seeds that are generationally influencing. So if we are able to create this impact fund, which I would say compassionate bank or something,
Right?
Yeah.
That's true.
and we connect with those on the ground to create design programs. In fact, by the way, when we design programs, who are going to implement the programs? It's going to be Christians.
It's going to be.
What are we doing? We're creating jobs. So that becomes another sustainable development goal.
Absolutely.
So and as we keep doing that, and I like the idea of looking at education, for example, and say, okay, we're committed to ensure that no child will be illiterate. We want to make sure that every child has the opportunity to go to school. Do you know what we're going to do? By doing that, we're actually influencing what they learn.
Absolutely.
We are influencing their spirit, man.
Totally.
And we're going to create a 10 years, 20 years, if they go through a certain curriculum that we influence, they will have the kingdom mindset. So 10, 20 years from now, if someone is 10, when they go through our school, become 20, but when it's 30, some of them can head to state and so on. We are having men and women of the kingdom that are actually controlling the world at such a time as this, as we go into the end. This is a very powerful spirit-filled idea. This is incredible.
It's so powerful because it's flipping this notion of go make disciples upside down. Because we think a version of that is kind of like you read in the Old Testament, oh my gosh, now I have to go in some mission trip and preach somewhere, and what if I'm shy and I cannot be on a pulpit, and then you shy away and you don't do it.
But you can.
But it's like you do it through, imagine, again, like maybe this is why I'm a crazy entrepreneur, but you were talking about education. Every single church, I would argue to say at least 99% of them everywhere on the planet has a Bible class or a Sunday school or a Sabbath school, depending on what denomination you are. That already is an infrastructure of kids gathering with an instructor or two to learn something. Why couldn't those turn into that same day something else is happening in the afternoon? So we tackle the literacy problem. And the same volunteers that study the lesson for that week for the kids, whether it was pre-K or first grade or whatever, will just tackle one thing. Let's just focus on geometry. And the month of March is geometry month.
Yes.
But you're leveraging already the infrastructure of a church that is already touching millions and millions and millions and millions of children every single weekend.
That's right.
But it's thinking differently, not thinking that doing ministry for the youth or for children only has the construct of teaching them Bible stories, but is also equipping them for future leadership. And that is where you find the future Esther's and the future Daniels and the future Joseph. So it's flipping upside down, even the way we do or think we do ministry as churches.
Absolutely. And there is one element that I would love to say. In this current world, in light of the advancements of technology and communications, we have access to the knowledge of the planet through a button, clicking on a computer
Skype it.
button in Skype or Google. You can
FaceTime.
Google whatever you want, and the answer will simply appear to you in your screen. So whatever question you have. Now the point now is not, let's say, to have access to that information because it's there. The issue that we need to tackle is what are you going to do with that information? Because that requires different skills. It means the importance of critical thinking, because then whatever you do with the knowledge that you already have through computer, you need to be applied in something creatively, either for creating business for the local community that will allow and support poor people living in that community, that will empower them, and also connect later globally through internet, for example. Then you have a potential of breaking barriers or obstacles that usually happens in terms of trade, because trade, if we go to the root of that concept, goes beyond just only doing that through countries, but at the individual levels. That where the concept of trade emerged initially, because people feel the need and they have something to trade in with somebody else. That in itself create an enormous opportunity to transform the economy that we are living in a world today. If we go to review in the news or newspaper or whatever communication platform, we will still hearing about economic crisis, and we are concerned about that. But if we have this kind of approach, our concern is not going to be the crisis, but the concern is going to be how or where these poor communities can invest the money and the wealth that they have created locally and in connection with other local communities in different parts of the world. So it's not talking about crisis, but it's talking about wealth. It's talking about distributing the wealth of the whole planet among all human beings. And that is, in my view, what Jesus wanted to say. For example, when he has this statement on the mountain, and then he just give fish to thousands of people, which to say how come 2 fishes or 5 fishes. And it's something that we need to take into account, because at the end, wealth is in our mind. It's an energy that needs to be created, and from a positive aspect of it.
Absolutely. And going back to what Ishmael was saying in terms of talking about the end times, I think that one of the signs of the end time occurred on December 6th of 2017, when President Donald Trump, which is the first time that America and a superpower in modern times recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I know that for years, for centuries, people have been saying that Jesus is coming soon, and things have not happened, because the Word of God says in Matthew chapter 24 that many will come in his name, that there's going to be famine, there's going to be war, but still he's not going to come. But what happened on December 6th of 2017, we have to have discernment and understand the times in which we are living, like the sons of Issachar from the Bible, because that's a huge sign that Jesus is soon coming. Because the moment that Jerusalem gets recognized as the capital of Israel, the following thing that's going to follow, we don't know how long it's going to take, is to build the third temple. And in order for Christ to come back, the third temple needs to be built. So I think that it's very important that we understand that Israel is God's prophetic time clock, because many people are seeking other things, other ways to find information, to understand the times that we're living in. And I think that looking at Israel, we're going to understand exactly what time we're living in, and how we can help people and tell people that Christ is coming soon, that they need to be saved, how people can be healed, restored, delivered from so many things that are occurring here in this world.
So I have a perspective, and I think it goes back to what I just said, that we the Christian community, need to flip what we think evangelizing means and looks like. Flip it upside down. If things are happening around you that feel very strongly and clearly like the end times, prophetic times, you can have 2 reactions to that. You can completely go into the fear tactic of kind of like hitting people with the Bible on the head. I told you so. Repent, repent. And that honestly, that throws
It's not gonna
people
work.
off. That doesn't work. That's where we get thrown into the crazy corner. That's not gonna work. But
And called fanatics.
if you use all of these things as a way to engage the faith-based community to say, okay, if this is the time, we need to amplify and dial up the way we're impacting people, the way we're touching lives, the way we are empowering future generations. Therefore, here is a bigger, better way for all of us to engage together as one. So it's using that as a motivation and not as a fearful tactic to go and scare people away, because that's really what happens with the gospel. So I think we should look at all those things as motivation and exciting things. And like, what else can I do? And how can we activate ourselves as individuals, as families, as communities, as churches united, to even do more and share, not by telling and being preachy, but by showing.
Exactly.
And that is where the 17 goals are so powerful, because you activate any of them and you're showing. And without people even knowing, or you even saying Jesus on a sentence, they're gonna feel him through you.
Right.
That's the difference.
Your
So
testimony.
it just feels different. People can tell whether you are doing this because it's school credit and I had to do so many hours of community service and here I am stuck in Guatemala in a mission trip, or because you love being there serving.
Yes.
That is how you touch lives and how you activate people for God's work without even calling it evangelism. I think that's how I see it.
I like to just jump in to say that everybody looked around and could see that things are changing. There are some paradigms that have been shifting. And the Lord showed me, gave me a very deep understanding of some of these shiftings of paradigms, which I'll share briefly, without taking a lot of time. But just follow me in these points that I'm raising. We have, in our lifetime, we are seeing things that are very unusual. We have heads of state that have been there for over 30 years, sitting all of a sudden in one stroke of event, they are thrown out, like Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, for example. We just saw first time in the history of Ethiopia that you saw a prime minister just wake up and say, I'm resigning. And then create some kind of transitional crisis. So we are seeing very weird things. We have election of Donald Trump, we have election of Macron, we have the voices of different types of political leaders. And now we are having the UN having a very different conversation, talking about reform, security sector reform, security council reform. I mean, these are things that in the last 5 years at least you will never hear. It shows that there's some paradigms that are shifting. And this is why I thank God for the relationship that your group is going to build with Africa, because Africa is going to play a very huge role in these times. You raised the point, Madelyn, about understanding the times and the season in which we are. That is exactly what every Christian needs to do. Every kingdom person needs to do. I don't want to use the word Christian. Every kingdom child needs to know that we are living in times and seasons that are interesting. The stage is being set for the king to come. And the Lord will do whatever he wants to do. In Isaiah 46, verse 1, he says, verse 10, I think, 10 and 11 said, don't forget, literally, don't forget, I am God and there's none like me.
Yes.
And he repeated it. And I am God and there's no one like me. My counsel will stand. My purpose will stand. Whatever I want to do, I will do. The name of the Lord had been profaned. And then the mystery of the church came in. So we have the church and the clock was stopped. Now the clock is starting again, where the paradigms are shifting. If you see, anytime there's a paradigm shift, the African shows up. If you look at the days of, when the Lord wants to preserve the nation of Israel, send them to Egypt.
Yeah.
When Jesus was born, and Herod was after Jesus, he sent him to Egypt. When they crossed the Red Sea, they met with Jethro, who is from Ethiopia. And when Moses asked Jethro, could you help us to navigate this complex crisis? And Jethro said, I'll give you the strategic ideas, but I'm not going to be with you. And guess what happened? They wandered around 40 years. When it gets to Jesus Christ going to Golgotha, carrying the cross, he was so worried. The last lap for the crucifixion to happen, guess who showed up? Simon from Libya.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's
Now
true.
you are seeing the paradigms are shifting. You're talking about the emerging Africa, the Africa, the rise. The paradigms are shifting. And Israel is making a lot of diplomatic relations with Israel, with Africa.
With African countries.
Yeah.
Interesting diplomatic relations. And yet you're seeing also the stage for the invasion of Israel is being set, in which the strength of Russia is growing tremendously, linking up with all the others, moving around, trying to take the center stage. It just shows that the last harvest is going to happen.
Yes.
And God, at the last harvest, the Buddha, everyone will buy them. We have to be prepared to spread the gospel. And this is what the Lord showed me. Everything we need to be doing today must be in the context of preparing for the last harvest. The way we teach people, what we read, what we share, how the understanding of the times, even the way we teach mathematics in private schools ought to change. And it has to be consistent with the gathering of the center stage. I'm telling you, there's something profound happening, and nobody is in control now. Everything is happening.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ishmael, Dodoo, Lili, Valletta, and Ambassador Carlos Garcia for joining us in this first series of roundtable discussions on faith affairs of the United Nations Association of El Salvador. Till next time.